New rules coming to the NFL in 2024. Proposals for a new kickoff. Does it make sense? Do we like it? And hip drop tackle on the way out potentially, but we're talking NFL draft as well. And the Arizona Cardinals, Monte Ossenfort, the GM, they are open for business with the 4th pick in the NFL draft. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We really appreciate all the everydayers out there, and we appreciate it when you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts, and hit the thumbs up and hit that notification bell as well so you know when a new podcast is live every day here on Peacock and Williamson, talking about the NFL. And interesting new rules in the NFL potentially coming this year. The hip drop tackle has been a talking point for a little while now. Trying to prevent injuries, right, is the key with a lot of these rules changes in the NFL. Are they making defense a little bit too difficult, though? And I want to start, though, with the new kickoff proposal. And for anybody out there who's watched the XFL, which is not me, and Matt, if I'm
not me either, yeah.
XFL either, but apparently in the XFL, they are returning 90% of kickoffs, and it's just not happening in the NFL. The NFL, the kickoff, like my opinion has been just do away with it because it's a joke, and no kicks get returned. And if you're trying to protect players and you change the rules to protect them so much that no kickoffs are being returned, do away with it because nobody cares about like this happened yesterday, Matt. I'm going off a tangent here, but I was trying to look for college draft prospects that are return specialists. And
who cares?
Nobody talks about it.
Nobody.
And I'm asking on Twitter, it's like, who are the return specialists in this draft? And like, a few, people like, Cooper DeJean, but it's like, I'm looking for like a 5th round, 6th round return specialist, not a guy who you have to draft in the 1st round as a defensive back who you may not even want returning kicks at the NFL level. And nobody knows. There's no rankings out there. Nobody talks about special teams. There's no kicker rankings. There's no punter rankings. Long snappers, couldn't name a single one for sure in the college level and NFL draft, and maybe 5 in the NFL, and probably not even 5, maybe 3 in the NFL. I can name long snappers for teams. Nobody cares about special teams. Nobody's tuning into special teams. Shorten the broadcast, shorten the games, do away with kickoffs, right? But the NFL wants to keep kickoffs. They want to keep those commercial breaks surrounding kickoffs. So they're trying to find ways to make it more exciting and still safe. So this, Matt, is the proposal. We'll go through it and we'll see if we like it. We'll see if it even makes sense because it's pretty convoluted. It's pretty long.
Real quick before you start, so I throw in 2 things there. Like I'm often asked, yeah, but the Steelers don't really have a kickoff returner. Who are they going to have? I'm like, I don't care at all. I mean, unless you're like the worst one in the league, they're just going to kick it out of the end zone anyway.
Yeah, when it comes to punts, just don't muff it. You need a guy who can catch a punt.
That's still kind of matters.
Specialized, and most of the kicks go right over your head out of the end zone anyway.
And you're right. It's all about the commercial breaks, and that's a lot of millions of dollars. That works. And then the only thing I wanted to expand on that you laid out so well was now onside kicks are impossible. So there's not even like that threat or the chance of them landing late in the game,
Yeah, and an onside kick is part of this as well, and you basically have to invent a new thing just to give a team a chance for this onside kick thing, which I don't care about onside kicks that much. Win a football game, and you don't want teams winning games because they got this weird little onside kick thing. Hey, it is called football after all, though, so I guess there has to be some kicking element to this sport. This is the proposal. The kicking team, the 10 players that are not kicking the ball, cannot move until the ball hits the ground or player in the landing zone or end zone. What is a landing zone?
Okay. This is the first I'm hearing any of these rule things, but this is interesting. Okay.
I'm going to have to read this 3 or 4 times because I read it. The first time I read it, I still didn't understand it. So the 10 players cannot move until the ball hits the ground or player in the landing zone or in the end zone. The receiving team, all players in the setup zone cannot move until the kick has hit the ground or a player in the landing zone or the end zone. Any kick that hits the landing zone.
Let me stop you there real quick.
Okay.
So I'm following so far. The term landing zone is weird. I just think that's somewhere in the field of play.
That's next.
Okay.
The landing zone is the goal line to the 20-yard line.
Okay.
So that's the
red
landing
zone.
zone.
Yeah, right.
Any kick that hits in the landing zone, which is the goal line to the 20-yard line, must be returned. Must be returned if it's in the landing zone.
So you can't do the fair catch thing now.
No fair catch.
Yeah, good.
Any kick hits before the landing zone, so this is before it gets to the 20-yard line. So this would be a short kick or a squib kick or a shank or, anything like that. Mm-hmm. Any kick that hits before the landing zone, doesn't get to the 20-yard line, that is a touchback to the 40 as if it went out of bounds in the old rules.
So you can't squib anymore, really, or you're penalized.
No squib. Has to land past the 20.
I don't love that part.
If a kick hits the landing zone, rolls into the end zone, and is downed, that's a touchback to the 20-yard line.
Okay, so it's not as beneficial as it used to be.
Right. By 5 yards.
Yeah.
If a kick lands in the end zone or goes out the back, then it's a touchback to the 35-yard line.
So they don't want people blasting them out of the end zone.
So you blasting it out of the end zone gets to the 35. You kick it too short or out of bounds, it comes to the 40. If you kick it in the red zone is the landing zone, basically. If you kick it into the landing zone between the 20-yard line and the goal line, it must be returned. And basically, the goal is the NFL wants every kick to land short of the goal line and get returned.
Okay, so initially I like much of this, to be honest with you, because we will have kickoff returns then. I mean, they're basically forcing you to return the football because, I mean, that's several seconds that the guys have to wait before they can leave the tacklers, that run down.
Yes.
So you're going to catch it, and then they got a long way to go before they get to you. You're going to
see some space in front of you to develop your scamper from there.
Yeah, and you're not getting it deep in your own end zone either. You might catch it at the 10, then they start running down. I'm at least going to get to the 20. Like me and you might get to the 20. I mean, if we could actually catch the ball. So I like that part. I mean, I think you'll have returns and returners will matter, and you'll have touchdowns and things like that.
Do kickers with big legs matter less now? Because one of the aspects of having a kicker with a big leg is you can kick it through the back of the end zone on kickoffs. And sometimes there would be a different guy who kicks field goals than kicks kickoffs for teams. And sometimes the punter handles the kickoffs. But
that's
so now
something's gonna ask you. The teams still even have kickoff specialists, or can they all kick it out of the end zone now?
Most of them pretty much could, but now if you have that kicker that maybe doesn't have a booming leg, maybe those kickers are more valuable now because you just want the guy who's going to make the highest percentage of your field goals. Maybe
Vinatieri at the end of his career wasn't kicking off, but he was making all the stuff in the dome and whatever. So two things I don't like. I still think a squib should exist because there's some strategy to that in that I want the clock to start as soon as possible. Like as soon as the clock starts, but while it's rolling around, if I'm trying to kill time, I have a lead. I just scored. I kicked off. There's 30 seconds left. I want to eat 5 seconds possibly. So there's a little bit of strategy with that, but I'm not going to stand on the table for that. I don't really care.
It just becomes more of a little poochie type of a kick instead of a squib because you're still going to kick it probably inside the 20 somewhere. But basically every kick is going to become the same. It's going to be hard for kickers to land it. Well, getting out to the 35 is interesting.
I mean, it's almost just like a golfer just has to hit the green, and it's a big green,
Won't most kickoffs, because this isn't a punt where you're going to deaden the ball in most cases. If you kick it to the 20, it's going to roll into the end zone.
I would say, what if I just don't catch it and I let it roll around and it goes into the end zone and then they get penalized because it takes a goofy bounce? I mean, it's not a golf ball. It's a goofy oblong thing that could take a crazy bounce. And I don't think you're going to try to I don't think you're going to coffin corner it either because it's too big a risk of it going out of bounds. I think you're just hitting wedges over and over to try to land it on the green.
Yep, exactly. It's exactly what you're doing.
So the other thing I don't love, it probably isn't that big a deal because the kickoff team isn't running for some time, is those other 10 dudes on the kickoff return team are going to have to be looking backwards. To when's my guy catching the ball? When did it land? Okay, now I can go block somebody. Like it would almost be like an offensive tackle looking at his quarterback before he has to go block a defensive end. But there's a big gap there.
Do you just look at the defenders because they can't move at the same time?
Yeah, maybe your eyes are on them. The second they start running, I start running, because if they go early, they get a flag too.
Right, and they can't like DQ and not move because then the return will just be able to run without it.
Because that's an offsides or whatever penalty they're going to call.
No fair catches allowed, and onside kicks when the fourth quarter. So there would just not be onside kicks until the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter
you can't surprise onside to open the game or okay.
Fourth quarter begins. Actually, hold on. Let's wait. Let's wait on the. We got to do a little break here. Well, let's wait.
Yeah, I have another thing I'll throw in there.
And more of our thoughts on this, and then we'll talk about the hip drop tackle, Arizona Cardinals, and what could happen at the top of the NFL draft next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And of course, there are those tasty draft props. I always say it. It's the best way to bet, in my opinion, all year at FanDuel is those draft props. And if you're listening to Peacock and Williamson, you might even get a little bit of an insight and advantage on where you can make some cash on those draft props at FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, figuring out the new kickoff rules proposal, and I have a feeling it's got a pretty good chance of passing this year. So that's why we're diving into it here, and we got to learn what these rules are. And so far, I can get on board with a lot of it. If they somehow can make it both safer and have more returns, Matt, then that's a good result, right?
Let me stop you there for a second, though. This all came about because player safety. None of this sounds safe to me at all. It sounds like a lot of huge collisions.
There's less of a running start, right?
It just takes longer before they run. I mean, they're going to get up to full speed their first 3 or 4 steps anyways. They just are leaving the line of scrimmage later. I mean, by the time that they smack into the ball carrier, it's going to be just like any other collision, right?
Hold on. I think there's even more. So there might be some, because this is the bullet points I'm reading. There might be alignment things that are changing as well. In fact, there are. The coverage unit is starting way down the field. There's a diagram here. Maybe I can pull that up in a minute. But yeah, so there's more to this. We're not even done. That's just the bullet points on the.
Okay.
So onside kicks. When the fourth quarter begins, the team trailing has the opportunity to declare an onside kick to the officials. Current onside kickoff rules would then apply. So basically,
it's coming. But I guess it's coming anyways.
And everything that's happened before at the kickoffs would change. Then you go back to the old kickoff style, and everyone would line up together 10 yards apart, and then you would attempt an onside kick. It's sort of like when you go for 2, right? Because you're kicking in a different place than when you go for 2. And so that
planet, I'm going for 2. Yeah.
So it's only in the fourth quarter and only for the team trailing that can attempt it, and you have to declare.
Fine.
If you have any thoughts before we get even deeper into alignments here. Alignment. All kicking team players, other than the kicker, will line up with 1 foot on the receiving team's 40-yard line. Kicker cannot cross the 50-yard line until the ball touches the ground or a player in the landing zone. The 10 kicking team players cannot move until the ball hits the ground or the landing zone or the end zone. So they're starting from the other 40.
Okay.
When they used to start at the 35, where did kickoffs even happen?
I was hoping you didn't ask me that because I should know, and I did.
amazing that I've never even thought about.
I was like, I don't even think about it anymore. I'm like, I think it's a
35-yard
35
line,
or
right?
30, right?
So they're
definitely going to be like a wedge.
20,
Like they're not kicking close to as hard as they could.
They're 25 yards. Well, no, the kicker's in the same spot he used to be, but the other 10 guys are up 25 yards closer. So the kicker's going to be by himself.
Okay.
All right, hold on. Let me pull up. I got to pull up.
It's a lonely world. What if the wind blows it off the tee and someone has to go back? Didn't they think of that little nugget?
Everyone just goes home. Refund the fans. Game over.
That's enough. We can't do it.
All right, here you go. I'm going to share this so we can get a picture for those of for Matt here and those of you watching on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed, by the way, and
check out my new page, by the way, too. I don't think I pumped that at Williamson NFL on YouTube. Over 500 subscribers. Join me on. I'm doing all kinds of stuff on there.
So for those watching on YouTube, here's a diagram of what this kickoff is going to look like. So as you can see, the kicker's all the way back here with the football at the 35-yard line, and then 25 yards in front of him is going to be his entire coverage team at the 40-yard line, and then 10 yards in front of them is the setup zone for the return team, and then
so they're really close. Okay,
yeah, so those are they're only going to be 10 yards away when this thing starts. And luckily for the NFL, the XFL has tried some similar stuff, and so you've gotten to see it in practice. Because no way they would have tried this, because it could have skewed things in one way or the other, and all of a sudden guys are returning kicks to the house left and right, and it would have screwed up the entire game, right? Because the scores would have been all out of whack. And so anyway, this is really interesting.
I joked about it, but on a windy day, if I only got 9 guys at the kickoff start line because I got to have someone hold the finger on it like Lucy, that's a big disadvantage.
And is it even legal to do that?
Right. Or is it just blow off the tee?
Because you have to start at the 40-yard line.
Okay.
We're 25 yards away. I don't know if you're even allowed to do that. Maybe the official has to hold it in that case.
Or the guy that runs out and gets the tee has to do it. The little kid that they pay $10 or whatever,
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I don't even know what to think. They're trying really hard to change something that's flawed. My vote would still probably be just do away with it altogether. Start on the 20 stinking yard line. You scored a touchdown, other team goes to the 20, and you're playing football again. But this could be a lot more fun if there's more kicks returned and it's safer. So I'm okay with that if that's the end result. But what we have currently is unnecessary. It's just kicking the ball through the end zone, and then they get a touchback every time, just about.
This screams to me, let's try it in preseason and see if there's any glitches or something like that. But meanwhile, special teams coaches don't get a lot of time in practice to coach their guys up. And they're going to have to teach them all this new stuff. Like special teams coaches are going to be like, I kind of hate this.
Well,
but
and
nobody cares about them.
If 90% of kickoffs are now going to be returned versus what was happening before, are coverage units and coverage players suddenly more valuable to the league? Are returners
100%
more valuable to the league?
Right, 100%. I mean, this sounds terrible, but the Steelers' 53rd guy this year was some former running back, and he never got his jersey dirty except for catching kickoffs. And my son's like, who's this guy? I'm like, I don't even know. I'd even bother to learn who he is because he never sees the game unless 3 running backs gets hurt. And he catches a ball and he kneels down. That's what he does.
Hip drop tackles is the other big one that has been proposed at the owners' meetings. And the NFL Competition Committee, according to Jonathan Jones on Twitter, they're submitting this language for the dangerous hip drop tackle. The penalty would be 15 yards, so kind of like a personal foul. Officials believe they can correctly call it. Some, including the union, have worried about the potential subjectivity of those calls. And so here is how it's laid out in the proposal for the language of the hip drop tackle. It is a foul if a player uses the following technique to bring a runner to the ground. A, grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms. And B, unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs at or below the knee. That's it. And that would be a 15-yard penalty for the hip drop tackle. And
like a horse collar.
Coming from, similar to a horse collar, coming from behind, and you grab a guy and then you drop down on the back of their legs.
Okay, so here's what I know about that is I know many people are going to be like, well, what do you want defensive players to do? You're taking so much. We can't hit him in the head. I can't hit him in the knees. I can't horse collar him. I can't clothesline him anymore. And it's too hard to be a defensive player. I get that. I'm cool with it. But deep down, there is some player safety stuff here. I mean, that much I know. It is a lot of people have gotten injured being hip drop tackled. And deep down, the league scoring is down. They want to help the offense. I mean, like, they want more touchdowns. They want more fantasy points. They want more action. And they want things to be harder on the defense because, I mean, that's just how the league is. And I might be talking on my butt here, but I do think rugby players, I know rugby players have taken the hip drop tackle out. And I think intelligent rugby people would tell you the NFL is insane. They should have done this 20 years ago. They should have got rid of it.
As far as the practicality of it and how it changes the game, Richard Sherman was really vocal about this. And his argument wasn't so much that it wouldn't work as being a little bit safer, but for him, he's like, okay, as a cornerback, it's already like you got to try to tackle Derrick Henry. How are you supposed to do that? Yeah. So while this might help the offense, it doesn't help the passing game. This helps the running game more, I would think.
I would say so. Yeah. Makes outside zone
and little guys to tackle the big guys.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you're in a trail position, AJ Brown over the middle, he's either going to take it to the house or I'm going to hang on him and drag him down illegally, maybe. But I do think it's Nick Chubb coming around the corner. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. I bet they do that one.
Next, let's talk. So your vote right now, yay or nay on those two issues?
Kickoff, I'm going to go nay. I'm going to say yay on eliminating the hip drop tackle. By the way, I'll be down at the owners meeting, by the way, folks. So
Williamson will be there. Does not have a vote as far as I understand, though.
No, but it's a pretty cool environment.
I'd say
I really don't care about either, to be honest with you, deep down. But
I don't have a strong feeling on either. I'd probably vote yay on both. Player safety, sure. Figure out some new ways to tackle.
When I'm at the owners meeting, I'm not going to have a sign.
Yeah,
hip drop tackle, hip drop. Try to get a petition going or something.
The current kickoff stinks, so do away with it or make it better. And so that's where I'm at with that one. That's why I
agree with that. It's a good way of putting it.
Next, Arizona Cardinals GM Monte Ossenfort says they're open for business at pick number 4. What does that mean for the top of the NFL draft? Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. A lot of us spend so much of our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you, first of all, and then make it a priority. Make sure you can spend that time doing the thing you want to do, seeing the loved ones in your life, making sure your life is more fruitful for you. Make life work for you and make yourself feel better about the time you are spending on this earth. And therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched to a licensed therapist, and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Interesting quote here, and this one was relayed from Ian Rappaport on Thursday morning. And this is Arizona Cardinals GM Monte Ossenfort talking about the NFL draft and where they sit at pick number 4. And here was his quote. "There will be a big neon sign that says open. I don't like it blinking. It messes with my eyes, but we're always going to be listening," end quote. That is Monte Ossenfort of the Arizona Cardinals. Matt, does that signify to you that the Arizona Cardinals would really be willing to move off of maybe a generational wide receiver at pick number 4 for an extra first-round pick and potentially drop out of the opportunity to take a really dynamic player at the top of the draft? Or is this an NFL GM saying, well, now, wait a second. If you're going to talk trade with pick number 5, you better be talking trade with me first because I want to hear about what you're trying to do just in case I like it. What do you think? Does this change how you feel about the Cardinals and pick number 4? Because as we have mocked on this very podcast, we've been like, yeah, maybe they could get up to number 4, but I really think in the end the Cardinals will stick and stay and pick there. And we've said the same thing about the New England Patriots at pick number 3. Could a team like the Minnesota Vikings break through even higher than a top 5 pick?
I think it's more of the latter scenarios. Like, don't just call the Chargers directly. Call us first. I mean, I want to be in on this. I at least want to hear what you have to say. I think, not to speak for you, but I think we're both more trade down people than trade up people. And Arizona traded down last year early in the first round. Maybe they're a trade down team, especially for all the needs they have. I mean, what positions should they ignore this year? Like none. I mean, it looks like they now have tackles. They have a quarterback, and that's about it. I mean, McBride's a good player, don't get me wrong, but they need so many things that I think warm bodies that can play is more valuable to this team than most. And even their free agency, I mean, adding guys like Evan Brown and Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols and Murphy Bunning and Jonah Williams. I mean, they didn't do the Raiders, give me Christian Wilkins and nothing else routine. They said, give me 5 guys that are going to play a lot on Sundays that aren't great. So I understand it. I also very much believe that the 4th pick in this year's draft is worth more than maybe any 4th pick in recent memory.
For quarterback or that
or Marvin,
wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's the number 1 wide receiver on most boards, or Malik Neighbors, if you think he is.
Maybe even Alt.
And here's what's interesting to me, though, is, okay, so Minnesota Vikings, they're on the phone with the Chargers. They're on the phone with the Patriots. They're calling up the Arizona Cardinals as well. And the Cardinals are sitting there like, man, it's going to cost you this because we want to stay and draft this player that we love at pick number 4. So this is what's going to cost you. This is what is more valuable to us than this player in pick. You want to meet that price? Go right ahead. Bring it on, right? Or then they use that leverage and they're on the phone with the New York Giants. And they're like, hey, Giants, guess what? If we go to number 6, it's a lot less expensive for you because we still get Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors at pick number 6. So we can also move down. So I wonder if on draft day, the Vikings, if they do need to get in front of pick number 6, that 5 won't be high enough because the Cards would be much more willing to go down to 6 than to go down to number 11. That's if a team like the New York Giants wants to dance. And if the New York Giants don't want to dance, then I think we're seeing the Vikings move to pick 5.
I agree with all that. Yeah, the fact that Neighbors and Marvin are close doesn't help their cause necessarily, and I think if you trade up to 4, it's for the 4th quarterback, more so than for Harrison.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would think so. Unless, I mean, and I guess I could see a world. I don't think the Giants should do this. And to be honest with you, I don't know if the Giants should move up at all. I don't know if I don't know if the quarterbacks are worth what it would cost to go up from 6 to 4. But that's what I'd be more interested in if I was the Cardinals is, a very, very short trade down.
Yeah, so I don't want to go real far. I don't want to go to 15.
Basically, it would only be the Giants and Cardinals. That's kind of the only team you want to hear from. But you want your pick to be valuable, and you want to maximize this opportunity you have with the 4th pick to maximize what you could possibly get from that. So if the Cardinals meet that price and the Cardinals realize that the Giants are on the phone with the Cardinals and the Patriots won't move off of 3, then you're in a really powerful position. So, of course, Monte Ossenfort wants to answer those calls and just listen because maybe the Vikings say, here's our 2 first-rounders this year, and guess what? We're going to give you a first-rounder next year and a 3rd-round pick at some point. You're like, we're just going to give you everything in the world that you basically can't say no because it's going to be more valuable to you than drafting this one player at 4.
Yeah, we're going to make an offer you can't refuse, and then you say yes. Otherwise, I'm like very happy to take Harrison and be done, Yeah,
or even move down a couple spots if the Giants want to move up. But
I think they have plenty of picks this year too. I mean, like from their other trade downs and stuff. So
yeah, they have the Cardinals already have 2 first-round picks.
They have 2 first. Right?
You would have to pay up for it or make it not sting, make them feel good about the player they're getting, and maybe they like Malik Neighbors enough that they would move down 2 spots, or maybe they don't even like that. Maybe it's just like, look, we love this one guy, and that's it.
I think you're just letting the league know to, hey, at least call us.
Any GM wants teams calling them. They might say no, but you want that action at your pick, and you want to be in control of all of those things for sure. And you want to maximize. And even with the Vikings, because this is an aspect of like when we do our Ultimate mock draft. This is coming up. We do it network wide. I'd be willing to bet that the Luke Braun, who's the host of Locked On Vikings, he's gonna be talking to these. We're gonna do trades, and we're acting as GMs for the teams that we host the podcast for. He's not gonna pony up the thing that pick 4, pick 5 are gonna ask. So I think there's a good chance in this scenario, in a mock scenario, and how many teams are actually gonna pick. So there's a good chance that he slides to 11. JJ McCarthy, I'm talking about, slides to pick 11 anyway. Right, the fourth quarterback, hit to 11 or close to 11. Will that happen in the real NFL draft? I don't know, but there is a possibility.
Raiders or Broncos might get aggressive then, or
right, and then you only have to go up a couple spots, like to pick 10 or something. So you might have to go up a little bit, but you don't have to go up to. You don't have to spend 3 first-round picks to go up to number 4. There's a possibility that the Minnesota Vikings. This is what I like about what the Minnesota Vikings did, and if they just stopped and said, okay, we're good at 11 and 23, and we'll wait and see if McCarthy gets really close. And keep pick 23 in the end, maybe. You know what I mean? Because I think going from where they were in the second round, I think they got themselves into a new tier of player at pick 23 to get a true first-round player at 23. And that's pretty valuable. So
I think that's why it happened.
I'm not just going to give that up. I think there is a possibility that Kwesi, who's an analytics guy, I think he looked at this and said, look, this trade by itself, without going up again in the draft to get a quarterback, this trade by itself was good enough to put us in position to draft 2 first-round players on our board. We have 23 names, and we're in that group. We're guaranteed to get 2 of those players. So we think we're in a different tier of player, even if we don't trade up again to get a quarterback. And so they could maybe say, okay, if J.J. McCarthy falls to 11, good. If not, we like what we're going to get at 11 and 23. So that might be one of the aspects about this that we're not looking at, because everybody in the world believes, and I still do believe, the Vikings will try to get up, but maybe they're not as adamant about getting up all the way up to pick 4 and 5 as we might think right now.
Maybe 23 is Knicks or Penix.
True, exactly. And if that happens, all of a sudden,
be real comfortable getting one of those there.
And our team's going to be able to get, like, could the Raiders or the Broncos get all the way up from where they are in the second round in front of the Vikings? Because the Vikings are already in front of them in the second round. Or were in front of them in the second round, right?
After 20 or 21 picks go, and they're like, oh, the Vikings didn't plan on moving up at all. They were going to sit there and take Penix.
Interesting.
That'll be fun. Yeah.
Tomorrow, we're going to start getting into NFL draft rankings, right, Matt? Position by position, Matt Williamson's rankings for the NFL draft. More mock drafts to come. I think we'll do another dueling mock draft this year as well. And of course, all the latest NFL news. Find us on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a comment on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed. Talk to you tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.